This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
It is almost impossible to count all the professions and various occupations that help people earn money. Professions differ in their nature and the character of the results provided. Architecture is one of the most popular occupations in the sphere of those careers that depend on the successful combination of creativity and developed practical skills in the fields associated with engineering and technology. Architecture as a career focuses on planning, designing, and building different constructions with references to organizing the space and environment with the help of technologies that are necessary for building. An architect, as the representative of the profession, is a specialist in designing buildings and further controlling the process of their construction. Architecture is traditionally associated with the process of creating not only usual buildings but also famous constructions, which are built according to various architectural styles that developed during different historical periods. That is why it is possible to state that architecture reflects the main tendencies in social and cultural development. From this point, architecture as a career field includes the knowledge of architecture history, modern tendencies, and the practical realization of the knowledge in the processes of planning and constructing. Architecture is based on the innovations and accomplishments in science and technology with references to engineering. However, one of the most important aspects is the creative approach to planning and designing a building. Architecture as a career is often chosen by people who are interested in design and art and who have a strong knowledge of the sciences. Several decades ago, the career of an architect was available only for persons from the highest social stages because of the top status of this profession. Nevertheless, the situation has changed, and today, any person with basic knowledge of technologies in engineering and with creative thinking can become an architect. Architecture is a prestigious field with high-paid jobs. Architecture as a profession is important for increasing the quality of people's lives, and it can be discussed from the perspective of its importance for social life. The results of architects' work are houses where people live, public buildings where people gather or work, and those buildings that have practical meaning for towns and cities. Moreover, the planning of towns and cities is also the result of the work of architects who are responsible for the sector of urban planning and design. An architect is a specialist in the field who is qualified to plan and design objects and constructions according to aesthetic and technical norms and principles. The key requirement to practice is the license, which supports the architect's qualification. On the one hand, the profession of an architect can be discussed as creative, and it is correlated with the sphere of art and design, where it is necessary to work with different forms, textures, and materials. On the other hand, the architect's activity is based on the effective usage of practical and technical knowledge. The profession of an architect, like any other career, also involves the ethical aspect because architects design and work out their constructions in buildings for people, with the help of people and according to the people's desires. Thus, it is possible to state that the field of architecture's responsibility is large, and it includes the processes of designing, constructing, building, restoration, and urban planning. These activities form the fundament of the architect's professional practice. Nevertheless, there are a lot of other activities that should be determined to make the complete picture of an architect's responsibilities. Projects can be different according to their significance and in relation to the number of people who are involved in their work. There can be two persons who are an architect and a client, or there can be a group of architects and a company as a client. The work on the definite project starts with discussing the purpose of a building or construction, paying attention to the specific characteristics. The next stage is the discussion of the desired elements of a building or a construction. Architects should focus on the desires of clients, their visions, and ideas to fully satisfy their expectations. The architect's task is to design a construction that could meet the requirements of the technological process and be rather creative. The following client and architect's discussions are based on the models and drawings developed based on the previous discussions and proposed by the architects to consult the client's vision of the object. It is important to note that architects should approve their projects and provide the necessary technical documentation for the town or city administration. The processes of planning and designing the building depend on following definite technological principles. Thus, architects must control and coordinate the process of building by paying attention to following all the specifications. The success of architects' projects depends on the effective combination of such factors as the function of a building, its safety as a construction according to the engineering norms and standards, and the aesthetic aspect. Architects pay much attention to discussing and thinking over the decorative elements that are used for making a building significant in relation to its aesthetic quality. Moreover, architects have different styles, and the peculiarities of these styles help distinguish the works of one architect from the others. From this point, an architect functions as a designer and painter and as a constructor and engineer to solve all the issues in planning a building. To conclude, architects can not only plan projects and control buildings but also provide advice in relation to architectural issues. Architects also spend a lot of time solving tasks that traditionally are not discussed with direct references to architecture. Thus, architects communicate a lot with clients and other architects who are organized as groups for working on projects, consultants, and the representatives of the administration. It is also their task to estimate the costs of the project and provide creative and effective ideas in order to win the next tender. Did you like this architecture as a career field sample? To get more works like this one, make sure to check out the free database of academic paper examples at ivpanda.com. You will find thousands of samples for all your study needs, without even having to register.